Graphs and the equations of parabolas are tied together. Remember that your parabola is in the form of y equals ax minus h squared plus k, or it's in the form of x equals a y minus k squared plus h. So looking at this, we have a graph, and based on that graph, we need to write an equation, okay? And then from there, you need to determine basically the rest of your information. So the axis of symmetry, the vertex, the focus, the direction of the opening, and length of your lattice rectum. With this being said, in order to write your equation, you need to know where your vertex is. So that's the first place I'm going to start. So when I'm looking at this, for starters, I have a sideways U. So I know right now that this is going to be in the form of x equals because it's sideways. Okay, the direction is opening left. So direction is left, which means that we're going to have a negative a value. Okay, and we'll work on that in a little bit. I want to work with the vertex first. So with the vertex, we can see that it's at this point here. And I've got numbers on my graph, so I know that the vertex, let's set up a handy dandy chart here. The vertex, right now, looking at this point is located at 3, -1. And this is in the form of h comma k. So my vertex is at 3, -1. And we'll deal with that in terms of the equation in a little bit towards the end. So here's the tricky part. The tricky part is finding the a. And I say that the a value is tricky because it's not always going to be 1. So with that being said, I need to pick a point on the graph that I can actually visually see a true coordinate for. So for instance, this point here at 1, 0, I can see that it is on, that graph is on that coordinate. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of write the equation in order to find a. So I know that I'm using this x equals a y minus k part. I'm going to do this off on the right-hand side here so that I can form my table on the left. So my x value for my point was at 1, 0. So I've got 1 equals some a value. Y, we got to go opposite of the k, so we know it's a +1 squared plus 3. By the way, what did I do? I goofed up and I needed to put the y value in there. So the y value is 0. So right now, I've got 1 equals a 1 squared plus 3. So all I'm doing is just solving for a. So I'm going to subtract the 3 over, and I get -2 equals 1a. A therefore equals -2. So now I can actually write the equation. And this equation is going to help me figure everything else out. So the equation is, and we want a general form, so x equals -2 y plus 1 squared plus 3. So I've got my direction, which was left. I've got the vertex at 3, -1. I figured out the a value, and now I can write my equation. So from here, I can go ahead and list out the axis of symmetry, which we know is in the form of y equals k. So in our case, y equals -1. The focus is at h plus 1 over 4a, comma k. So we have 3 plus 1 over 4 times negative 2, comma negative 1, which would really give me 3 minus an 8. So 2 and 7/8, comma negative 1. I've got my direct line. At x equals h minus 1 over 4a. So 3 minus 1 over 4 times negative 2. So it'd be 3 plus an 8. Direction of the opening we already kind of talked about. Plus you can see it from the graph, so we don't really need to list that. And the length, we've got 1 over a, which in our case is 1 over negative 2. It's the absolute value. So 1 over 2. So based on our graph, you want to find your vertex, then find your a value based on your vertex and a point that is on the graph that goes through a specific point. So on this one, we found a point that went through at 1, 0. I plug it into my makeshift equation in order to solve for a. Then I can answer the rest of the information. Now, sometimes it won't always be, you won't have a graph to work off of to write an equation. Sometimes it'll be the other way around, where you've got some information given to you and you need to graph it. So if we're given the information that we've got our vertex at 8, 6 and our focus at 2, 6. Okay, so we can use this information in order to graph. Yes, we know that our vertex is 8, 6, so we kind of have an idea where that's going. So right now we need to figure out whether this is an x equals or a y equals. So notice here that the y coordinates are the exact same. So the instance in which the vertex and the focus have the exact same coordinates tells us this has to be an x equals. Okay, because those were the same. So we've got x equals a, and then y minus 6 squared plus 8. So this is where we need to figure out our a value in order to graph our function. Okay, so based on this information, we know that the focus x coordinate, so 2, equals our h value, which happens to be 8 plus 1 over 4a. So from this information, sorry, that probably just made it worse. From this information, we can solve for a. So I'm going to get rid of those lines. All right, so we subtract over the 8, so we have negative 6 equals 1 over 4a. We would multiply both sides by 4a, or you could leave it and just multiply by 4 and then flip it. Doesn't matter. But anyway, so we'd have negative 24a equals 1, and divide that over, so we'd have 1 over negative 24. So now I have an equation that I can actually work with and graph. So I've got x equals negative 1 over 24, y minus 6 squared plus 8. So when you're graphing this, what you're going to want to do, actually, let's do this. This is going to be easier. What you're going to want to do is make an H chart. You have an x comma y. So you know that a good starting point is 8, 6, because we already know the coordinates of that point. And then from there, pick an x, or a y coordinate, sorry, a y coordinate that's close to 6. So what I would do is I would pick 5, because that is below, and I would pick 7 because that's above. And then I would plug that information in order to give me a number to work with. So 5 minus 6 gives me -1. -1 squared gives me 1. So I've got 8 minus 1 over 24. So I technically have 7 over 23, 24. And if I plug 7 in, notice it's going to give me the same thing because I'm squaring it. So now I've got 3 coordinates that I could actually graph and use that information. All right, so looking at this, I've got a point at 8, 6, and then I've got a point at 7 and 23 over 24, and that's at 5. And then I have one at 7 and 23 over 24, and that's at 7. So I'm starting here. So now I know this is a parabola, so it's going to go this way. And I knew it was going to be sideways, and I knew it was going to open left. I knew it was going to be sideways because it was an x equals. I knew it was going to open left because it was an a equals. If you happen to have troubles, my suggestion is if you get to this point where you can get an equation, I would go ahead and plug it into Desmos. Desmos will plot it, and you can see the graph and get points off of that.